It's been a while since I sat down and talked about the Chainsaw Man manga, and I feel like the time was better now than ever, because with the Chainsaw Man anime ending about a week ago, to also my overall enjoyment of Chainsaw Man reaching an all-time high, and the manga reaching into some of the best content it's ever had, and in all honesty, it's probably my favorite read to read every single week. It's something I look forward to. I was like, you know what, I'm going to sit down, and I'm going to dedicate some time to Chainsaw Man's newest chapter, and kind of some of the events that's been going on in all of these chapters that have come out. So let's dive into it. Chapter 116 that released a few hours ago has probably one of the most wholesome moments in it since Part 2 returned. This entire moment right here, as you can see on screen, with Dingy and Asa is just adorable. It's honestly, it's beautiful. And the way this is conveyed to the reader just goes to show just how Fujimoto, he loves to nod nostalgia back to his readers. For instance, this entire sequence here, many are going to point out to Asa's lost friend with the Justice Devil that happened recently. But this scene also is a reference to Rize and Denji when they were having a good time, and Denji potentially was really going to be with Rize before she obviously inevitably died. This is a lot of, like, callback to that. Like, this is a 100% callback to Rize and Dingy, and I think that there is a lot of moments throughout this chapter. Like, if you really just sit down and you look at this chapter, you know, you could see references to other things that's happened throughout the story. Like this moment right here, where Dingy's like, I like that attitude, reminds me of an old friend. And the way Asa reacts, she gets a little bit embarrassed, but we know who Denji's talking about. He's talking about power, and we know what's happened to power. It's a harsh reality, and Denji's obviously lost a lot. He's been through a lot. He lost Aki, he lost power, he lost Makima, technically, regardless of how that turned out and how messed up it was. He lost a lot of people on his journey, basically, to the end of Part 1. And so, seeing this moment with him saying, I like that attitude, reminds me of an old friend, it's a very powerful moment, honestly, to kind of showcase Denji's state of mind, how he's processing the death of power, processing the death of his life so far, the just grieving, etc. It shows how far he's come as a person, and that he has matured quite a bit. But also, what really kind of iterates on this point, like we get a little bit more details to Dingy, is that he has been saving up money. And we know kind of behind the scenes he's been kind of doing this. We could kind of get a reason for this thanks to the ending of Part 1, but basically he's been a caretaker over this girl. He's kind of like a father figure, and he's been watching over her, wanting to give her a life that, you know, he never could. He says that himself within this chapter, and despite how, you know, she's like, okay, once I'm out of here, I'll grant you any request, and he acts like this very simpish looking mode and all that, regardless of the comedy and the way Dingy comes off as a character, this entire interaction he has with Asa is a very powerful moment, because the reason why he, you know, takes these hats, he gathers them up while he, you know, is scamming hobos on the street, etc. He is trying to get money in any way he can to be able to send this little girl to college. And I think that, like I said, is very powerful, because Dingy's at a point in his life now to where it's like he's gotten to experience the world, and he realizes how crappy the world can be. He realizes that the world is very cruel, it's unforgiving, and it will continuously throw curveballs at him without any regard for his state of mind or being whatsoever. And because of this, he wants to give a girl that obviously has never gotten to experience life yet, and she's still very young, he wants to allow her to be happy and allow her to have a life he will probably never get to live. Yes, he may be going to high school. Yes, he may be having a life that he never had when he was younger, but still, his life has been in shambles. He has had his very foundations of his life just ripped from him at a very early age. He didn't really get to experience a proper life, even if he was given another chance to a certain degree. So he wants to make sure the girl that he's raising doesn't ever experience that issue that he has went through throughout his life. This chapter does a lot of good for Denji's character, and it establishes a lot about just how he's been since the events of Part 1. Now, besides obviously that, I'm starting to understand now why Dingy was kind of pushed down into a secondary character or a support character for Part 2, because I think it actually shows the weight and gravity of the situation of how much he's developed, but also Fujimoto's writing style and what he's trying to convey through Dingy's supportive actions throughout these chapters. So let's get into that. So obviously, when part 2 of Chainsaw Man began and we got introduced to, Asa here, and I'll talk a lot more in depth with her in a second, but when we got introduced to her, it was very controversial, okay, that she was the new MC. A lot of people did not like that, and then there was some that really liked that, and it was up in the air what was really going to happen to Asa. For instance, is Asa going to die, and Denji's going to come in and take her place? What's really going to happen to her character? And there was controversy around it, not that big, but there was, and obviously, as a writer, when you write a story, and you have a main character, let's say Dingy, or any character, honestly, and you replace that said main character, that's going to cause a lot of audience members maybe to become detached from the story, not care too much about the content because they want to stick with the MC. And I think it was a very risky play by Fujimoto-sensei to do that for Chainsaw Man and have Asa as the MC. But as we've continuously had these moments, these chapter moments of her growth and getting to see how she is as a person, and especially these recent chapters that have really just taken a back step and not really focused on any other character but her, I think it's really powerful. And we have gotten a lot of good moments with her that have really given us a lot of depth to her and who she really is as a person. And I think that Denji being the one that pushes her forward as well in these supportive roles that we've seen in these past few chapters is really good. It shows his strengths as well. He no longer needs to be the shining star, the person in the front lines, and, being the one that takes all the attention. Even though he wants to get his name out there and be Chainsaw Man and known to the world, he's fine with just living in the background and not being that powerful or well-known, even though it seems like he does. He just wants to get through day by day through life and just live a good life. And I think, once again, we get to see a lot of this growth and just how he's able to affect the world around him, and even in a nature that's very passively, like we have been seeing in these chapters. So yeah, just, I like Denji's secondary support role. I think that's great. However, there is some worries about that, because obviously with this arc, and especially with the cliffhanger with her making an aquarium spear, there's been a lot of debates within the community that Dingy might die. That's a possibility, and that is something that does need to be talked about. I think this is a very powerful argument to make, and it definitely needs to be made, is that if there is one style of writing that Fujimoto has kept very consistent throughout Chainsaw Man, in at least his stories at the very least, his couples usually end in tragedy. That's the truth. Like, legitimately, if you think about everything that we have seen from his stories, even his one-shots, not even talking about Chainsaw Man, his romantic couples usually end up in a very sad and tragic state, either through death or other means. And when you think about the circumstances of Chainsaw Man, and Denji now being kind of lower down into a support character, his head is on the chopping block, so to speak, because many might assume Asa might die, but technically Asa is our MC, and I think a data book came out recently or something that stated that Asa literally is the MC right now, which has obviously been apparent, but still, it's very important when you have this official data book or something come out that kind of says she's the MC. The fact that that's a thing and Denji's more of a supportive role makes me only assume that there is a potential possibility of him permanently dying. Yes, I know the series is called Chainsaw Man, and there is something that we do need to understand, that technically devils can, die and come back. We've seen this. I mean, the only way a devil's permanently gone is if Chainsaw Man eats that said devil. But the thing is that we have seen fiends, or people like Dingy, Power, example, when they die, they're gone. But they can come back to a certain degree, like the devil comes back, but not the actual person. So, when we think about it like this, there is a possibility that Dingy could die, and then Chainsaw Man will come back to a different form or degree. Who knows? I'm just throwing things out there. This is a community discussion, and this is just, fan theory right now. This isn't something that is officially confirmed, but I do want to point out, with the overall state of how Fujimoto handles romantic couples, it's very likely that one or the other, either Asa or Dingy, is going to die. Unless he wants to break that norm, which is also a possibility. So, anyways, let's talk about Asa, because I really like her, and as I've already kind of been hyping up Dingy, I think it's only fair I talk about the series as MC, especially in these latest chapters, and just this moment where she starts to act very much like Power. It's like, I'm glad you noticed, you have a good eye, and all this. It's really funny, and I really love her character, and I think what really won me over from her character wasn't the whole Bucky scene or anything like that. I think it was this scene in particular, where she sets up this date, and she's like, I'm pretty darn cute. She's talking about how she's just gorgeous. She's about to have this outstanding date with Denji. And as she goes, she just starts talking about aquariums and talks about sea anemones and fish and all of that. And everything about this is just, let's cut the crap. Let's be honest. It's boring. Like, yes, if you're a marine biologist and you're into fish, you'll probably enjoy this. There's nothing wrong with that. But let's be honest, the average Joe, the average individual that's just there for a date to be with a girl, is not going to care about all of this that she just starts to explain with these long paragraphs. The average person's going to be like, can we just have something romantic? Can we go around and, go see penguins, etc., what Dingy wants to do? And when I saw this, I was just like, holy crap, she is on the spectrum. She is legitimately on the spectrum. And I think everybody can collectively agree that Asa is on some shape or form on a spectrum. Because the way she acts and the way Dingy confronts her, and then she continues to act like no, let me just read a few of these lines, okay? So Dingy's like, hey, enough about sea anemones already, I want to go look at the penguins. She responds with a deadpan face and says, no, we're supposed to look at this for another 10 minutes. And okay, let's make sure we all understand this. This is a date. Dates are supposed to be romantic. They're supposed to, be holding hands, smiling, eating food, laughing at maybe funny creatures or stuff you see in the aquarium, whatever, just having a good time, being happy, smiling. And when you see her talking about these sea anemones, even as she finds them interesting, her overall expression just shows that she's not really showing a lot of life in her face. She's not smiling. And Dingy obviously is someone that is very bored. You can just see by his overall facial structure within this chapter, just the way he's sweating, he seems very bored, and this really does show a lot about Dingy's character, and I'll talk about that in a second. But his boredom, you can just see it clearly on his face. And Asa not being able to read the room and understand what's going on here, like I said, is the reason why I say, and many probably say, she's on the spectrum. Like, holy crap, read the freaking room. Read the room. That's what you need to do. And she obviously is incapable of that when she sets her mind on a certain plan. It's hilarious. And I think that Fujimoto being able to do something like this is a different level of no chill that I actually appreciate. It's like the Justice Devil. I'm not going to say the exact words that happen in those chapters because you two wouldn't like that whatsoever. But you know what happened when the Justice Devil stuff happened with, Asa's friends like, don't go tomorrow. It's just, I don't dare say those words. But you know what I'm talking about. The fact that Fujimoto has no chill with some of these, characters at all in the way he writes a story, I really respect it. I respect the unfiltered nature of his manga. And I think that's why many people have come to love what he writes as a mangaka. Now, besides obviously talking about, our best girl being on the spectrum, we do need to talk about Dingy as a character and how his overall reaction is to this. Obviously, this really shows how much he has developed as a character, and I think that a lot of people might have missed this because of just the horrible or the boring nature of just Asa explaining all this stuff about sea urchins to sea anemones, etc. People might have missed that Dingy's patience was relatively high here. If this was Dingy at the beginning of part 1 Chainsaw Man, Dingy would have just left. He wouldn't even said anything. I'm gonna think of a scene that happened in the Chainsaw Man anime recently, before the anime came to an end. When Power and Dingy were in the elevator, and they were raiding that, the building and all that, and they were going to go after the Katana Devil, you had the moment to where Dingy, is like, let's be quiet and all that, and then you see the zombies. Power runs out, starts getting excited, he's like, get my back, Dingy, and Dingy doesn't even say anything. He continues going on up the elevator. He doesn't care. Just doesn't even say nothing to Power, he just leaves her. And in that moment, it shows that he just doesn't have no care for crazies or people just going off script or whatever. He just doesn't care. And the fact that, he did that, but in this, he stuck around and he said things to Asa shows his maturity level. That he isn't the most mature person, but he definitely has matured enough to be able to try to stick through things that even he doesn't like. And I think that is very important to his character, that what this chapter establishes. So, yeah, in this moment, when I read this chapter, it instantly won me over to Asa. I already liked her. up to this point, but this really won me over because it really said a lot about her character, Fujimoto's writing for part 2, but also Dingy as a character. It's just great. And then also this reveal with the Famine Devil and all that, and Call Me Fammy, and, you know, you need to turn Chainsaw Man into a devil, or not a devil, but a weapon or whatever. It's just, this is a really good chapter, and, like, the chapters following, etc., is excellent as well. So I think that overall, Fujimoto has been on a constant, non-stop banger roll for his chapters. It's excellent. Honestly, the enjoyment I get from Chainsaw Man in these chapters reminds me of the era of when I read Tokyo Ghoul. I do not say that lightly. I legitimately don't, because anyone that has been around for all these years and has watched my content knows how much I love Tokyo Ghoul. I absolutely love Tokyo Ghoul. Regardless of your opinions on it or whatever, I still harbor so many great feelings towards that series. And I loved reading it week by week. It was such an experience reading Tokyo Ghoul. And those emotions kind of flow into me with Chainsaw Man. That I have really enjoyed this manga so much since its return, and it really has blown me away by the character writing and the way Fujimoto does, like, little nostalgia moments also like this. It's great. So, I guess I'll leave it there for now. The only thing I want to say is that I think that there is going to be something very sad that's going to happen soon. A major character death is going to happen, because this is Fujimoto, and he definitely isn't someone that holds back on character deaths. So we will see. But I guess I'll leave it there. Just wanted to talk about my overall thoughts on the latest stuff in Chainsaw Man. Tell me your thoughts in the comments below, how you felt about these latest chapters. How do you feel about Asa? How do you feel about Dingy? Do you think someone's going to die? Let me know in the comments below. But with that, be safe, stay healthy, Chibi out.